Hello and welcome to my review of the 1981 horror film The Beyond, directed by Luca Fulci. I've never really heard of this film until quite recently, which is a surprise given that it's quite an old film and it's pretty much as old as I am. But it is by quite a well-renowned director, Italian, which is probably why I've never heard of it until now. And quite a well-regarded film as well, so I was looking forward to watching this. I sort of came about it because I saw recently on YouTube somebody list this as one of their top 10 scariest films of all time, which put it on my radar. And I just happened to see that it was being shown on Prime as well. And earlier this year, I just happened to watch a few Dario Argento films, which has put me in the mood for keeping my mind open for more Italian horror films. So all in all, the perfect storm, I guess, for me watching this in 2020. So the other night, the moment came, I sat down and watched The Beyond, and so here we are reviewing it. The plot is about a woman called Lisa who moves from New York to Louisiana. She's opening a hotel. Louisiana's always a great place for horror, by the way. It's a very small hotel, I'd say 4, 5, 6 bedrooms, so almost like an overgrown bed and breakfast, really. But what she doesn't know is that this hotel is right on top of one of the 7 gates of hell. I presume the other 6 are just somewhere else in the world, but we never find out where they are. This film is solely to do with this one gate of hell underneath this hotel. So once she's accidentally opened this gate of hell with the various renovations her workmen are doing, and that's where the movie proper starts. And through this gate comes all manner of evil through the air, turning people into zombies. And I mean, it's described as a zombie film on the internet if you look in certain places, but there's actually more types of threat throughout this. The threat comes from a variety of places, mainly zombies, but all sorts really. It's quite a mixed bag. My biggest takeaway from the film is that it's so extremely violent. I mean, I've got quite a high limit for violence, but this was an extremely violent film. There's one part in the middle of the movie which is just vile. This scene in this library. If you've seen the movie, you know which scene I'm on about. I don't really want to spoil it, but if you've not seen the movie, when you get to a scene with this guy in a library looking up blueprints of the hotel's structure, there's this really, really disgusting scene. It's one of the most horrible scenes I've ever seen. And I was thinking, oh, is this a little bit too much? But I'm not going to rank the film down just because of that. It's not the movie's fault that my tolerance of violence only goes so high, and I can take a lot, believe me. But in general, the movie is very violent, and there's lots of practical effects, those old style effects, you know, where if somebody gets stabbed in the eye, then it will be done with a proper prosthetic and it looks really realistic compared to CGI. There's lots of stuff like that. And a lot of the violence is focused on the eyes or the head, and I think the eyes are one of the most gruesome places that you can get, you know, shot or stabbed in on film. It just looks really awful. But I think it's kind of it's kind of part of the film's story that a lot of the violence is directed towards the eyes and the face. It's kind of a running theme. I think it's something to do with hell wanting to blind the people it's killing, so that when they come down to hell, they'll be blind, and therefore hell will be extra bad for them, or something like that. You sort of have to decide for yourself what it all means, but there's definitely a theme there. And there's even a character who comes from hell to help Lisa deal with what she's facing. And she's a blind woman, so she was in hell blind, and now she's come back to the surface to sort of as a helper. And it's that little wrinkle of having that helper which just adds a bit to the film, actually. There's a really good scene early on where Lisa's just driving on this weird road that has water on either side. It reminds me of that big motorway that's somewhere down near Florida Keys, except this one's quite low to the ground near the water, so I presume it's in Louisiana. It can't be the one in Florida, but I'm not sure if it's a real road or whether it's a hallucination or what, but it's a really nice scene. And Emily, this blind woman who's come up from hell, is just in the middle of the road with her dog, just waiting to introduce herself and get on side with Lisa. And some of the most tense scenes are actually with Emily later on, actually. But yeah, it's a very tense film, very oppressive, bleak, there's virtually no humour in it. It's a film that constantly feels like it's weighing on you while you're watching it, and you're sort of like, oh, what's the next really gruesome scene, really scary scene coming around the corner? I mean, it's not just throwing gore at you for the sake of it. It is a genuinely unsettling, high-quality horror film, I would say, but it certainly pushed my limits. Acting's very good. Nobody you've heard of, or certainly I've never heard of it. It's an Italian film from 40 years ago, so... sound, probably a mixed bag. There's some really bad music in it, like it's from some old 70s daytime detective show or something, but there's also a really good piano beat that plays for at least 2 scenes that I thought was really, really good. So definitely up and down when it comes to sound. Ending was very good. It's worth plodding through the film to get to the ending, because I thought that was really clever and original. I won't say whether it was a bleak or a happy ending, but certainly I left the ending thinking, okay, that was really, really good. If you like gore, you'll get plenty of it here, as I've already given the game away on that one. And apparently this film is part of a trilogy. It's the second film in a trilogy. It didn't feel like chapter 2 in a story. It felt like I was beginning from the beginning. So maybe it's one of those trilogies that's just very loosely sort of grouped with the other movies, like the Romero Dead trilogy, or that trilogy of John Carpenter's, which is like the End of the World trilogy, but the films are not really related that much. But I don't know, it's a weird film for me to judge. I sort of enjoyed it, but I also felt really grimy afterwards, like I was just happy to get through it. I wouldn't say that I'm in a rush to go out and see any more of this guy's films, even though he is quite highly regarded. I think if they came along on some of the free streaming services, I would certainly watch them, especially the other 2 films to this trilogy. I'd be sort of curious to see more about the whole 7 Gates of Hell thing. But on the whole, I was left with a kind of middling opinion, I would say. So in terms of my review axe, I think it would be 3 bloody dripping axes today. So that's The Beyond from 1981. By all means, give it a shot if you see it on a streaming service. If you're into Italian horror films in any big way, you've probably seen it already. It is quite a well-regarded one, I think. Okay, I will see you